So I understand that the Urban Meyer situation is probably one of the worst things to happen to the Jacksonville Jaguars in the last few years. Not only were they just a bad team, but now the certain light that is being shined on what their head coach was doing and what they were allowing him to do for this 8 to 10 month stretch while he was the head coach of the football team, it might be one of, if not the worst instances of a college coach jumping to the NFL and having it completely blow up in their face and hurt their team. I'd say in my 22 years of life, I have seen a lot of franchises look like they are the number one worst team in the NFL. Not only just team in terms of a roster standpoint or how they're performing on the field, but just looking at what they do in the front office and what they do at an ownership level, there are obvious deficiencies when it comes to either evaluating football or evaluating the people that you put in charge of your football team. And we've seen a lot of franchises not only flirt with being one of the worst teams in the NFL, but full out go and marry that worst team in the NFL mantra. And it's not, like I said, just what happens on the field. It's people who are in charge just making these terrible decisions. You look at teams like the Chicago Bears, who have been flirting with one of the worst teams, being called one of the worst teams in the NFL for about 4 or 5 years now, ever since they hired Matt Nagy. You're talking about a Houston Texans team that, outside of that one time that they were up like 28-0 in the AFC divisional playoffs against the Kansas City Chiefs, they have been one of the worst franchises in the NFL. The Detroit Lions can't seem to get out of their own way. The Cleveland Browns just got out of being one of the worst teams ever in NFL history. I think they went 0-31-1 in 2 seasons. But right now, the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think, have to take the cake because if you look at their 26-year history as a franchise, you would think, wow, their first 5 seasons, they went to 2 conference title games and they were in the playoffs 4 out of 5 years. If you look at the last 5 years for the Jacksonville Jaguars, in 4 almost full seasons, they have 14 wins, they have 47 losses, and they've gone through coaches Doug Marrone and Urban Meyer, both who were which I think a couple of the most embarrassing admissions of a head coaching hire that we've seen back-to-back times out of a franchise. I've never seen two worse head coaches back-to-back for an NFL franchise like Doug Marrone and Urban Meyer. Which just makes it even more weird to think about because as soon as that team came off of their run in 2017, they had a down year in 2018. They were nowhere near the same team that went to the conference championship game. They were one of the worst teams in the league. And after a year of just that, Shahid Khan decided to gut the entire roster of all of their young players, sending Jalen Ramsey to LA, letting Calais Campbell go to Baltimore, having all of this talent that they had on the roster go. I believe they cut Blake Bortles halfway through 2018, or they benched him at least and then cut him over the offseason. It just was weird to watch because, like I said, this team was so talented. Now, I want to rephrase that actually because both Urban Meyer and Doug Marrone are not terrible head coaches. Urban Meyer's case, he just wasn't, he didn't seem like a very professional person by the end of his tenure in Jacksonville. And I think that really is what did him in because you can't be doing some of the things he was doing, man. You can't, after a loss in Cincinnati, stay and go to a bar and get filmed dancing with a woman that's not your wife, dude. You can't be doing that. You can't be kicking your kicker in the leg while he's doing stretches. That's just awful. That's just not what you should be doing. Now, in Doug Marrone's case, he was given about 4.5 seasons to do something. He did one thing in 2017, take his team to the conference title game, and then their offense completely fell off by about 50% of their points scored from the previous year, and he was canned 3 years after. Now, the only difference is Urban Meyer was brought out of the college ranks, and he was looked at as being the next guy in Jacksonville to help Trevor Lawrence transition to the NFL. Not only did he not do that, but there is a chance that he fully embraced it's almost like he fully embraced trying to destroy this franchise even more than they have been. There's reports of him calling his assistant coaches losers. There's reports of him, like I said, kicking players while they're stretching. There's reports of him completely alienating himself from the players. And there's very obvious, issues that Trevor Lawrence had with Urban Meyer. I don't know about you guys, but in 22 years, I've never seen a rookie quarterback go out and fully address the media and say that I am not on the same page as my head coach. That is something I have never heard before, especially from a rookie quarterback. And to Jacksonville's credit, they sided with Trevor Lawrence, and after they heard everything that, came out about Urban Meyer, they quickly swept him to the side and made sure Trevor Lawrence knew that we stood with the players and are not putting up with any sort of BS coming from the head coach. And this was his second or third chance that Shahid Khan, the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, had given Urban Meyer. The video of him with some woman in a bar that wasn't his wife came out in October. It's crazy to think that that's 2 months ago now. The hiring of the strength coach who was accused of racist language when he was coaching at Ohio State hires him, and then the guy resigns the next day in February. That was early. We've been having red flags about Urban Meyer for a long time now, and it's really surprising that he even made it this long. I will say about Shahid Khan, this is a pattern of hiring bad coaches, or at least coaches who don't fit what your team does. Because since 2011, the Jacksonville Jaguars have had one winning season. 2011 is the year that Shahid Khan had purchased the Jacksonville Jaguars. They've had one winning season, I think one playoff win, maybe two playoff wins, and they have been consistently one of the worst teams in the NFL. Like I said, 3-26 in their last 29 games. That is completely awful. And, some of it isn't necessarily the coach's fault. And this is kind of adding to my whole entire point of this video of calling the Jacksonville Jaguars not only possibly the worst franchise in the NFL, but probably the most undesirable team to play for, coach for, front office manage, or own. And that's just that, nothing works in Jacksonville, man. They get good players like Calais Campbell, Jalen Ramsey, Leonard Fournette, Allen Robinson. All of these guys have been a member of the Jacksonville Jaguars within the last 5 or 6 years. And that's just guys that I could name off the top of my head. Think about all the other talent that's been through that roster over the past few years who are putting up good numbers for other teams around the NFL. It's just weird in Jacksonville right now. And they are very undesirable to coach, play, or manage right now. The one good thing that Jacksonville does have going for them is it seems like they have a strong leader in Trevor Lawrence. And what I will say is Trevor Lawrence to the Jacksonville Jaguars, we're probably going to be looking at him 15 years from now as how Peyton Manning was to the Indianapolis Colts. Because if you remember, the Indianapolis Colts themselves were a terrible franchise when Peyton Manning came to town. And it didn't look great the first year or so for Peyton Manning and the Indianapolis Colts while he was there. But that's what happens when you don't have a full team around you. And you're basically all your resources are with one guy. Now, the Jacksonville Jaguars do have some decent players on that offense. You have James Robinson, who's a 1,000-yard rusher, undrafted free agent from last season. You have Travis Etienne, who they're going to get back next season. You've got guys like Laviska Shenault. You've got guys like, you got some guys. I'm not going to front and tell you that Jacksonville has a lot of really good players. They don't. But if Trevor Lawrence can be, like I said, what Peyton Manning was to the Indianapolis Colts, if he can be that to the Jacksonville Jaguars, this Urban Meyer and latest coaching saga that has happened in Jacksonville, nobody's going to remember it. Nobody's going to remember it. They're going to remember Trevor Lawrence as one of the greatest players of all time. And, I would say that right now, I don't know if the Urban Meyer era was a bad or good thing for the Jacksonville Jaguars because on one hand, I think Trevor Lawrence gets to see just how bad a franchise could get if the head coach is off. And what he gets to know is if he sees red flags with other coaching candidates for the team, I think he will make sure it's aware that he knows of those issues to the owners or to the front office. I think it in that hand it's a good thing. But on the bad part, we have no idea how many bad qualities Urban Meyer has taught to Trevor Lawrence. You have to kind of remember at the time of the hire, Urban Meyer still had some respect in the NFL. Urban Meyer still had some football respect because of what he did at Ohio State. Now, there were some off-the-field issues that people were very skeptical about when he was hired, but at the same token, people couldn't deny the success he had on the football field at Ohio State. So I would assume at the time there was some trust between the two guys, and now that Urban Meyer's gone, hopefully anything that was bad that was taught from Urban Meyer to Trevor Lawrence is out of that building and not going to stink up that franchise for the next 5 to 10 seasons. I'll end with this, and like I said with this Shahid Khan situation, since 2011, there have been coaches by the name of Mike Mularkey, Gus Bradley, Doug Marrone, and Urban Meyer. That's not a good track record. I mean, if you're good at your job, in 10 years you hire one head coach, maybe two, because that means you got the right guy. And you would have to hope that Trevor Lawrence would help in terms of keeping a job for a head coach, but right now he can't be relied on to do that. They need to hire a head coach that can help coach Trevor Lawrence up. They need someone like a Sean McDermott that was hired in Buffalo a few seasons ago when they got Josh Allen to play quarterback. They need like what Sean Payton was for Drew Brees in New Orleans. They need like what Pete Carroll was for Russell Wilson in Seattle. They need someone who's going to bring this man up. And who knows? I mean, you could have someone come from the college ranks back up. You could have someone who's in an NFL circle right now. You could have a retired legendary coach come back. But at the end of the day, you cannot make another Urban Meyer hire. I got bars. You can't make another hire like Doug Marrone. You cannot make another hire like Gus Bradley or Mike Mularkey, for God's sakes.